Hey Met fans, Brian here from Mets Mayhem, and man does this team fight to the end. Game 2 of a Game 3 set at Citi Field versus the Toronto Blue Jays. Let's get into it. Griffin Canning took the mound for the Mets Saturday evening, making his second start of the season. First at Citi Field, and went up against former Met Chris Bassitt. Now Canning retired Bo Bichette to start off the game on a fly ball to Brandon Nimmo for the first out. After getting ahead of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on 0-2 pitch, Canning threw a changeup low and out of the zone, then followed it up with a fastball up and out of the zone that he got him to chase and swing and miss for the second out. Trying to work Anthony Santander up and in, Canning fell behind quickly 3-1 before walking him on a ball just off the plate. Former Met Andres Gimenez, and for some reason I called him Jimenez yesterday and I apologize, but Jimenez then singled to put runners on first and third with 2 outs. That brought up the Jays catcher Alejandro Kirk, who struck out on 3 pitches at the top of the zone. Clearly, Canning had a plan, he executed it, and he got him to strike out for the third out of the inning. Francisco Lindor then led off the bottom of the first inning with another double on a line drive to left field. Juan Soto followed by flying out to center fielder Myles Straw, advancing Lindor to third with 1 out. However, Chris Bassitt got Pete Alonso to strike out on a 73-mile-per-hour breaking ball after seeing 93 miles per hour most of the at-bat. Chris Bassitt has a wide arsenal of pitches that he can throw at different speeds. He had a great pitch sequence, and he made Alonso really look confused. It wouldn't be the first batter of the game to look that bad. Bassitt really pitched a great game. So now with 2 outs, Brandon Nimmo came to bat, but he grounded out to Jimenez, who made the easy throw to Guerrero Jr. for the third out of the inning. Griffin Canning struck out the first 2 batters in the top of the second in George Springer, who just didn't have a good game at all, and Will Wagner. But then he got in a little bit of trouble. Myles Straw singled to left field, and after he got ahead of Alan Roden, no balls and 2 strikes, he couldn't get him to chase anything out of the zone. He worked the count to 3 balls and 2 strikes, and then he walked him. So now we have first and second, 2 outs, and the top of the order back to Bo Bichette. Thankfully, he flew out to Jose Siri in center, and that ended the top of the second. In the bottom of the second, the Mets once again led off with a double, this time from Jesse Winker, on a line drive to right field. So we have a runner at second, no outs, once again, but the Mets couldn't break through. Bassitt struck out Vientos, swinging for the first out. He worked him inside the entire at-bat. Then he caught Beatty. He kind of worked him backwards, starting off with a curveball, and then he froze him with a cutter on the outer half of the plate. He had to have been looking for something completely different because that pitch was just right there sitting there waiting for him. But he got in his head. He messed with him. Again, he made him look bad, similar to Alonso early in the game. And then we had Jose Siri popping up for the third out to Guerrero Jr. in foul territory. So now we move on to the top of the third. Canning got his first clean inning, 3 ups, 3 down. He got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to pop out to Alonso in foul territory, similar to what happened in the prior inning. Anthony Santander grounded out to second. Beatty made the throw over Alonso for the second out. And then he struck out Jimenez on a fastball right down the middle. The pitch before was a fastball that he fouled back. But the 2 pitches prior, Canning threw back-to-back changeups. It looked like Jimenez was expecting one because that pitch was basically right over the plate. It was on a tee, ready for him to swing at it. He just got frozen and struck out. So we got a little bit of a pitcher's duel going on here. So for the first time, there's no leadoff double to start off the inning for the Mets here in the bottom of the third. In fact, Bassitt got his first 1-2-3 inning. He retired Hayden Sanger on a ground out to Jimenez. He got Francisco Lindor to fly out to left fielder Alan Roden, and then he struck out Soto to end the inning. So Canning had another good inning here. He retired the first 2 batters in the top of the fourth. He got Alejandro Kirk to ground out to Alonso, and then he struck out Springer looking for the second out. He then lost Will Wagner on a walk. It was a 10-pitch at bat, but he then got Myles Straw to hit a grounder to Lindor. He threw the ball to Beatty at second, got the force, got out of the inning. So now we move on to the bottom of the fourth inning, and Pete Alonso's leading off, and he was called out on strikes to record the first out. Nimmo then flew out to center field for the second out before Jesse Winker hit kind of a low sinking line drive to right field. George Springer came on, couldn't get to it. It got past him. It went to the wall for a triple. However, Bassitt, the veteran that he is, he wouldn't break, and he struck out Vientos to end the inning. So at the end of 4, it's still 0-0. Move on to the top of the 5th inning, and Alan Roden led off with a ground ball to right off of Griffin Canning for a base hit, and then Bo Bichette came up, hit a line drive single to center field. Now we got runners at first and second and nobody out. Carlos Mendoza decided to pull him at this point. He brought on Jose Butto to face Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who greeted him on a single to left field, and that scored Alan Roden. Blue Jays got their first lead, 1-0. So Butto was then able to get Santander to line out to Soto for the first out. That allowed Bo Bichette to tag up and advance to third base. Jimenez was walked on a 3-2 pitch with a pitch nowhere near the plate. So now we have bases loaded. It's still 1 out. Alejandro Kirk came up to bat. He struck out on a pitch up and in. He foul tipped it. Senga was able to hold on to it. He really kind of helped Butto in that situation because that pitch was out of the strike zone. But, plate discipline is important. It's kind of not eye level, but, out of the zone, but close enough that he didn't want to let it go. Swung at it. Senga held on. We got the second out. So we got, lucky in that bat there. Then George Springer continued his miserable day, grounding out to Lindor, who threw over to Alonso to record the third and final out. His day gets much worse, trust me. So a lot went on in that inning. Canning once again was given a little bit of rope. Once it appeared he was getting in trouble to see how he would react, he wasn't able to right the ship. Buddha came on to face the middle of the order. He immediately allowed an inherited runner to score. Eventually loaded the bases, but he managed to buckle down, get out of it. Only allowed that 1 run to score. Still keep the Mets in the game. So now we move on to the bottom of the 5th inning. The Mets didn't answer back. Chris Bassitt struck out the side, in fact. He struck out Brett Baty, Jose Siri, and Hayden Sanger. So that takes us to the top of the 6th inning. Budo stays on. He got Will Wagner and Miles Straw to ground out for the first 2 outs. But then he gave up back-to-back doubles to Alan Roden and Bo Bichette, and that gave Toronto a 2-1 lead. At this point, Budo was pulled. Brazoban came in the game. You have a runner on second base, 2 outs. He's facing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And he got him to line out to Jose Siri in center field and keep the game at 2-0. So we move on to the bottom of the 6th inning. Chris Bassitt is still dealing. He got Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto to ground out for the first 2 outs. And then he got Pete Alonso to fly out to George Springer. And that ended the bottom of the 6th inning. Brazoban stayed on, pitched the top of the 7th inning. He gave off a leadoff single to Santander up the middle. He managed to get Jimenez to line out to Soto in right field. He then got Kirk to hit a ground ball to Vientos, who threw to Baty at second for the force. Baty tried to turn the play through to first base. Kirk was ruled safe. However, the Mets challenged the call at first base, and after the replays confirmed it, the call was overturned. The play was ruled a double play. Kirk was out, and that ended the inning. So now we go to the bottom of the 7th inning. Blue Jays are still up 2-0. Mets are showing no sign of life at this point. Brandon Nimmo grounded out to second, and then Jesse Winker grounded out to short. So now we have 2 outs already in the inning. Mark Vientos finally came through, hit a line drive single to left field. So now we have 2 outs, a runner on first, and the Blue Jays decided that was enough of Chris Bassitt, and they brought on reliever Yimi Garcia. Brett Baty was thankful that Bassitt was out of the game, so was the rest of the Mets. And he immediately lined a single off of Garcia to right field. Vientos advanced to third base, so now we have first and third 2 outs. Jose Siri then walked, so we have the bases loaded. Sanger came up to the plate. Mendoza decided to go to his bench at this point. Sterling Marte came on, pinch hit for Sanger. But Sterling Marte grounded out weakly to the right side of the pitcher's mound. Garcia took the ball to first base himself, and that ended the inning. So at least the Mets are showing a little bit of a pulse this time, but they didn't break through. So with Sanger pinch hit for, Luis Torrens came on to catch the top of the 8th inning. Brazoban stayed in again to pitch the 8th inning, and he struck out George Springer to record the first out. This is definitely a game for Springer to forget. Will Wagner next grounded out to Alonso, who made a nice diving stop, and he led Brazoban perfectly to first base with the toss for the second out. And then Miles Straw flew out to Soto and ended the inning. So now we're going on to the bottom of the 8th inning. The Blue Jays decided to bring on Brendan Little to replace Garcia. And Little did little right. versus Francisco Lindor, walking him on 4 straight pitches. Pete Alonso's plate discipline this year has been superb, but not so much today. He got Alonso to strike out swinging at 2 pitches out of the strike zone, recorded the first out of the inning. Brandon Nimmo then lined out to semi-deep center field, deep enough that Lindor was able to tag and go to third. So now we have runner on third base, 2 outs. What is the point of him tagging up? It puts Lindor in a position to score on a pass ball, a wild pitch, possibly, or maybe even an infield hit or error of some kind. It's winning baseball, but it wasn't needed because Jesse Winker came up and ripped the ball that looked like it was going to go out. Unfortunately, it didn't go out, but it banged off the wall. A second before George Springer banged on the wall himself. Springer was able to get up, get the ball in. He was clearly shaken. Lindor scored easily. Prior to Winker hitting that ball, I forgot to mention that Soto also got on base. So 2 outs, Soto was running on contact. Soto was able to score. He did kind of not run hard from first to second. It was midway he started to turn it on because he thought the ball was out. That's something that we want Soto to kind of not assess on his own. Like, let's run hard from the beginning from first to second. When the ball's out of the park, then you can kind of jog. Thankfully, it didn't come back and bite us. Soto scored. Lindor scored. It's now 2-2. Winker's on third base. The crowd is now back into it. Winker breathed life back into this Mets offense. So another huge hit for Winker. The Mets offense didn't amount to anything until this point. Now the game is tied. Brendan Little was pulled for Nick Sandlin, who came on and struck out Mark Vientos for the 3rd out to end the inning. And then the Mets went to Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz came on and pitched the top of the 9th inning. He struck out Rodon looking for the 1st out. Bo Bichette lined a single to right field. So now we had a runner on first and 1 out. Now we're facing Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who hit kind of a, not a soft but not a hard ground ball to the right of the pitcher's mound. Diaz really should have let that ball go away. Lindor was charging in. Should have had a play at getting Guerrero out of first base. Guerrero's not the fastest runner. But Diaz made a play on the ball. He didn't quite get down low enough. The ball glanced off the tip of his glove. Slowed the ball down. Kind of diverted a little bit. Lindor couldn't get to the ball in time. Guerrero's safe. So now we have 1st and 2nd and 1 out. They gave Vladdy an infield single on that play. Then we have Anthony Santander at the plate. Diaz then challenged him. He got to 1-2 and he challenged him on a thigh-high pitch, kind of just below the belt. Fastball, middle of the plate. 97 miles an hour, and he struck him out for the 2nd out of the inning. So now we have Andres Gimenez at the plate. And after bouncing a slider that went behind him into the backstop for a wild pitch, moving up the runners to 2nd and 3rd, Diaz came right back with a better slider, back foot slider, struck him out swinging, and that ended the inning. So now we go to the bottom of the 9th inning. It's still 2-2. Brett Baty led off and grounded out to Gimenez, who made the throw over the Guerrero. Now we have 1 out. Jose Siri then walked. He advanced to 2nd on a wild pitch from Nick Sandlin. So now we have the winning run at 2nd with 1 out. Luis Torrens with his first at bat of the game after coming on to play catcher in the 8th inning. When Marte came and pinch hit for Sanger. Hit a low sinking line drive to left field. Siri didn't have a good read on it. Otherwise, he possibly could have scored on that play. He wasn't sure if it was going to drop or not. He played it safe. It's fine. The ball's in front of you. It's his read. So he got to third base. Now we have 1st and 3rd and 1 out. Toronto brought on former Philly Jeff Hoffman. And he replaced Sandlin to face Francisco Lindor. On the very first pitch, Lindor jumped on it, hit a fly ball to center fielder. Miles Straw had no chance of throwing out Siri, who was tagging up on 3rd. And that was it. Walk-off win. Lindor with the game-winning RBI. Siri scored the game-winning run. Mets win 3-2. So after not doing much offensively, being kept in check pretty much by Chris Bassett for most of the game, the Mets immediately took advantage of the Blue Jays bullpen, something that was a specialty of this team last year. They would stay in the game long enough, work up the starters' pitch count, knock them out, and then do damage against the bullpen on a consistent basis. So it was pretty nice to see them continue to do that this year. So now some takeaways from this game. Griffin Canning made his 2nd start. He He pitched into the fifth inning. However, his official stat line reads 4 innings pitched on 1 run, gave up 4 hits, walked 3, and struck out 6. Griffin Canning is pitching for his rotation spot. When Paul Blackburn returns, he very well may get the 5th starter spot. Griffin is going to need to, when given the opportunity, when given a little bit of rope, when he gets into trouble, get out of it and show that he's capable of doing it. This is the second time when Mendoza gave him a little bit of rope and he couldn't get out of it and then was pulled immediately. So he's going to have to show that he's able to go deeper into games to get himself out of trouble. He's also going to have to limit his walks. 3 walks in 4 innings and change is not good. What helped him was he did strike out 6. But, all in all, it wasn't a horrible start. It wasn't a great start. It was good enough to keep the Mets in the game. And, we just need to see him improve in his next start and the starts after that. So Jesse Winker had a monster game. He had a double and 2 triples, including the 2-out triple to drive in 2 runs to tie this game up and give this team some life. Jose Butto wasn't at his best. He allowed the inherited runner to score immediately on that single by Guerrero, but he gutted through an inning and 2/3. He did give up his own run on 3 hits. He walked 1 and struck out 1. Again, he wasn't great. He wasn't horrible. It was just good enough. We've seen Butto better than this, but he did his job in keeping this game close and giving the Mets the opportunity. Diaz then came on and pitched a scoreless, albeit a rocky 9th inning. He gave up 2 hits. He did strike out the side, but for me, the star of this game on the pitching end has to be Brazoban. He went 2 innings and a third. He saved the bullpen. He kept the game at 2-0. He allowed the Mets the opportunity to fight back and have a chance to win this game. It was a huge outing for him. He's likely only on this roster because Blackburn was put on the injured list for the injury right before the season opener. However, if he keeps pitching like this, I can't see the Mets sending him down when Blackburn returns. And that's scheduled for sometime later this month. We'll see. Still a lot of time between now and then. If you told me right now who would have to be sent down or released at this point to make room for Blackburn, I'm going to have to say Danny Young. Despite being a lefty, he looks to be the odd man out at this point. However, still a lot can change in 2 weeks, so let's see how things develop. Now, while I would prefer to see the Mets offense click and lead this game from start to finish, score a ton of runs, there is something to be said about playing in and winning a game like this. It gives the team confidence. It lets them and the fans know that they're never out of the game and they will play to the last out. It's something that helps build character and helps shape a team. So, with the 3-2 victory, the Mets move to a record of 5-3 on the season. The Blue Jays drop to 5-4. The third and final game of the season is set for Sunday at 1:40, where David Peterson will make his second start of the year, and he goes up against Bowden Francis. So I'll be back to recap that game, but until then, let's go Mets.